Well, hello folks, I'm L.A. Little. This is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets. We do it from a neoclassical perspective, asking ourselves each day, what happened today? What does it tell us about the coming ones? Do the show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube under the channel L.A. Little. Do a weekly show on Sunday as well. As far as these markets, what happened today, let's take a quick look here. So we got, up day about 0.5%, decent little bounce. Gold sells off a little bit, about 10 bucks. Silver the same. We had finally, and this is the most interesting part, and this is what contributed to the bounce today, and we talked about this last night, bonds and the dollar, right? Those things have been rocking lower and starting to shake the markets up, and they stabilized today, and that stabilization in these two areas is what allowed this to take place, not so much here but in Europe in particular. Let's take a look at what we got. Let's go to the charts here. So inside days, as you know, if you've been following me for a while, they don't really tell you much. And volume's about the same. Inside day, who cares? It doesn't tell me anything. Next bar, another inside day, a little less volume. Same thought. Doesn't tell me much. We could extrapolate and try to find things and say, hey, it went into, I can look at this intraday and say, okay, so it goes back into the breakdown bar, it can't get over it, fails, comes back in. Yeah, all that's true, but I don't want to try to read too much into this. It doesn't really tell me much. So let's not try to stretch it here. Russell. Now the Russell actually had a day that was over. Remember, it yesterday had a reversal bar about the same volume. Today gets over that. It's inside these big bars, and so a little less. And what I'm talking about here is you're inside, right, this bar from 2 days back, right? You're inside that bar, and you got over the bar in between. But again, I don't want to try to read too much into this. If I look back and to say, okay, where's some significant bars? There's one here, right? There's this one here, a breakdown bar. There's that one as a breakdown bar, and you got your swing point lows up here you broke. You've also got, those are the main things. And so when I look at all that, it's like, okay, prove to me you can get back over this bar to start with, and we'll see tomorrow what that does, because we have. If you go back here, and actually there's one more thing. You've got a bearish retest regen going. That's probably the most important thing right now. So you tried once to get over, it failed, right? Tried to regenerate lower. Now you're bouncing back up and you're coming back into it again today and testing it. And actually I didn't see that earlier. 120, that's 1225.47, and today's close was 1225.54. 7 cents into it. Sweet. Okay, let's think about what's coming. Because I don't think these tell us much. Tomorrow you got the employment numbers. You already had Yellen, informing us that the market's overvalued, which was kind of a cute little thing going on there. With the employment numbers tomorrow, the Fed wants to raise rates. Right? They want, and I believe, and I think I said it last night, I believe what Yellen was really telling us is, hey, you're not listening to me telling you we're going to raise rates. So I need to find a different way to tell you that. No, your valuations are out of whack. Maybe that's how I can tell you. Right? And so that seems to be what's going on in the Fed. We don't see uniformity in the Fed because we get all of them yapping. We used to not have that, but anymore that's the way it works, right? They all hit the trail, they all start talking. So it's kind of hard unless you're like Hills and Brothers, somebody sitting there watching them every day, reading everything that they say, and that's exactly what your job is. It's kind of hard to make sense of what the conflicting views are. But one thing we know is that if employment continues to get stronger, right, that is going to pressure or give the Fed the cover to try to raise the rates. So when I look at these charts, I know that the Fed wants to raise the rates, and I ask myself, what's going to happen on tomorrow's number? Well, you're going to have a number that's about the same as it should be. You're going to have a number that's much more employment than you expect, or a lot less than you expect. I think if anything, we're going to get a little less than we expect. But if we get a blowout number either way, it's bad, right? Because one of them says, hey, we're going to raise rates. The other one says, man, we're in the toilet. So, if you're a bull and you're banking on this number to help you, I'm not sure this number is going to help you. And when I look at these charts, and let me go back to the S&P, when I look at these charts, it looks to me like what really wants to happen here is this thing wants to trade down to the lower end of the range, right? You got up here multiple times, couldn't break out, right? You've tried twice down here. Well, you made a range, then you came back, tried to test into it, and then you go up here and you hang and hang and hang. This market to me looks like it wants to try to trade down to the end of the range. Now that may be off some sort of a bounce tomorrow, and then next week you do it. That may be just straight down tomorrow. I don't know what it is, but it looks to me like that's what this market's trying to set up to do. If I pull the weekly across, you can view it in a better context here. It's kind of this range going on. It looks to me like it wants to try to come test that and see about, if it can get into the lower range. That looks to be what's happening here. Okay, let's look overseas. Now, a lot of these charts I just didn't get a chance to look at today, so we'll look at them together. So let me pop over to these and see what they look like. Okay, so let's start with the CACs here. So the CACs gets under, back over, has more volume. And it tested this low and held it again. And with more volume though. This is not out of the woods yet. Alright, so what was this ABCD down? It was 52.83. That's about 300. And that would be about 48.33. That almost got to it. So the bottom of this support zone that the charts are showing you is about where it wants to get to, right? 48.33, so we're right in that area. You got a hammer reversal, but higher volume. That can go right back down there and test it again. So I don't know that this one's done. It certainly can bounce. It did bounce a little bit today, just like we talked about yesterday. Let me see what the DAX looks like. And it did the same, and the DAX did the exact same thing. Tested as a low, has more volume, not so much a hammer, but a reversal. This one also is not done. 1239. Well, actually, it's actually from here, right? 12,000. That's 800 points almost. And that would take it to about 10.9. Yeah, so it's the exact same setup. These are almost done. Just with their structure, right? And the structure I'm looking at here, and sorry, I'm a little obtuse tonight, but the structure I'm looking at is an ABCD structure that try to just to measure to about there, and so it didn't quite get there, but it's showing signs of wanting to find buyers. And that's a good thing if you want to be long. And so, yeah, it's looking up. Doesn't say it's quite done yet, though. Let's look at Asia. Let's start with Hong Kong. Hong Kong's coming back into that area that we talked about. It's almost there. This is where it's trying to get to. May just end here on this bar. I would expect they're going to try to reach it tonight. And they're pretty close. They may hang on this bar though. That's 27,304, and they're already there. So this, the way this looks to me, it's a beautiful setup actually. You're coming back on lighter volume into this bar, right? That's kind of like the ideal bar. Well, not the ideal bar. That is the first good support bar. Got a swing point low hanging down here and got good support down in this area. So we may see it bring it on back into there. You know, especially if it came down to tonight and no volume on it, it'd be a sweet setup for a buy right there. As it is, where it is actually not a bad place to be thinking about it. And so, you know, taking these charts and going back and thinking about us being US isn't set up too bad. Maybe that number tomorrow is just going to come out blasé and it's not going to matter. And then it's all about what happens over here. Let me look at the Shanghai. I know they were down. Let me see what kind of volume they had. No volume. So this is coming back. 4,000 was the number. 42 and 4 were the two numbers. That one's coming back into that area looking all right. Let's see about friends over in India. So here's the Nifty 50. And that trades lower, a little doji. Let me go see what the other index did for those guys. So here's the Sensex. And that one can trade lower. That one can trade lower. You got an ABCD structure down. It's getting close though. If it's not done, it's pretty close. So that one's getting close. Let me look at Australia. Now they had gotten whacked. And on, wait, I picked the wrong one. Hang on. Yeah, and so they got whacked again. And remember that weekly chart, they were coming down into a retest regen, and the volume is going to be there. So this could actually trade a little bit lower. The good thing about this is the first trip back. So if you're in Australia and you're trading your markets, this is the first trip back to this zone. That's a high probability buy, right? So if I'm Australia and I'm trading Australia, I want to be looking for a place to get long, because you're going to at least get some sort of a sideways, you know, not sideways, but small bounce at least. And that's probably back into now what is a bearish retest regen zone on the weekly. And so, you know, depending on where this thing trades to, you know, your stops are down here. You're shooting for at least there. So if you can get it somewhere in here, it's a 1-to-1 or so, but it's a high probability that it's going to go back up. And so that's always what I'm looking for, is what kind of probability you got. Probabilities are pretty good there. Let's see if the FTSE did anything today in front of the elections. Traded down pretty heavy. Reversed. That's really going to depend on what the elections do. They get those coming back. Let's look at Toronto. And Toronto holds more volume, just like us. I mean, excuse me, just like Europe. Still looks like it's going to get a bounce here pretty soon. Just for grins, let's look at Taipei. They gave it up. They tried. They hung there for 4 days. Finally give it up. It's coming to the bottom now. And it gives up. Here's a good one. So this is interesting because, of course, they're trading off of Asia, right? If they don't get back inside here tomorrow, this is a total failure on the retest regen, which is, and this is what we were just talking about in Australia. You see how, you know, they come back, they get into it, they try to hold it, right? Volume's heavier, but it's lighter than this one. This really should have held. The fact that it trades under it tells me two things. One, they're trading more off of China than they are off of themselves. And two, you know, this could be just an under, you know, back over right quick and still hold. But in my book, that should have held. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that should have held. Okay. I don't think there's really much more to talk about. I think it all depends on what the employment numbers are tomorrow and how, you know, if we, let me say it this way. It looks to me like Asia is going to try to trade lower tonight. But they're getting close to where they're going to bounce. They're setting up their first range. And if you remember, let me go back to Germany or the CACs. We can look at the CACs because it's acted stronger. Asia is trying to set up this same sort of scenario where they're setting up their first range off the top. Now they've been up a lot more. That range could be deep, just like this has been deep. Or they could get a fast bounce because nobody wants to, miss the next train ride. But Asia, to me, looking at the charts, it looks like it wants to come in a little bit more. Europe is about ready to bounce. Haven't quite finished off their ABCD structures, but they're close. So if the US number comes in horrible and really sells the US off, then these are going to be pulled lower, finish off their structures, and then probably you see a reversal off that. Now, let's go back to the US markets real quick because it kind of plays in here. And I didn't look at the TLT and the bonds, but those got to bounce. Let's look at those real quick. Come back to the GSBC. If this sells off hard, it could easily make it down into this zone, right, and put the fear of God in everybody, and so or start putting some fear into people, and so that is set up that way. Now let me quickly go back and look at, and I'm sorry, I should have looked at these earlier. Not quite as prepared tonight as I typically am or try to be. Let's look at the euro. Let's see what the euro did. So the euro hangs. Okay, let's look at the dollar. There's no volume. Look at the dollar. Dollar gets volume, still in the range, still doesn't have the volume, and fails again. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, so that's that. Let's see what the bonds did. The bonds try to get back into the swing point low, 122.97. Don't get there. Okay, so it looks to me like we're going to get some selling tomorrow. Now that I finally threw these others in the equation. That employment number is not going to excite the bulls. We're going to get some selling tomorrow, more than likely. We're going to see Europe probably trade higher until we get our number and then trade lower. Asia tonight is a toss-up, but it looks like it's going to trade lower. That's my take. All right. Hey, have yourself a great one tomorrow. Good weekend. And I'll catch you on Sunday. Good night, folks.